He's a certified peer specialist. Martin Gromulat is a certified peer specialist and mental health advocate and attorney. He serves both the NAMI New York State and NAMI Westchester Board of Directors. He is very involved in his local peer and mental health communities and regularly meets with legislators to advocate for mental health parity on all levels and other important measures. So thank you, Martin, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Tanya, and thank you for having us present at the conference. This is really a wonderful experience and really, an important gathering. So as Tanya said, my name is Marty. I'm going to sort of moderate today. What we're going to do is we have peers from all over the country who have important stories to tell. So we're going to go through each peer and they'll tell you a little bit about themselves. They may share some of their story and their recovery. And we will certainly take questions at the end. If you have questions that come up, please, put them in the chat box. We're here for you. We want to hear from you, right? This is called Peer Discussion Group. So hopefully it will be a good discussion and we'll learn from each other because we're all peers. So to give you a little bit of my story, my background, I suffer anxiety, depression for as long as I can remember. I think I was about 7 and my parents got divorced and that was very traumatic, and moved on through life, became a rebellious teenager and found that therapy and medicine. And I was doing that and I was doing okay. And I was working as an attorney. And I found that being an attorney was giving me more anxiety and depression. So I sort of said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I sort of was able to start over and do something I'm passionate about, which is environmental justice, sustainability issues. And it really made a big difference for me. So I refer to myself as a recovering attorney. Then about 6-7 years ago, I had a really serious bipolar event. I became very manic. And for anyone who's familiar with bipolar, you can become very manic. And I had these visions of grandiosity, and everything was great. I felt great. But other people were telling me, listen, there's something a little bit off about you. You should probably go see a doctor, go to the hospital. But because I was active in my illness, I said, no, I've never felt better. And it's all you people who need to go get help. And that's a big part of mental illness is meeting the person where they are at that moment. And people knew that there was something different, but they couldn't communicate that to me. They couldn't understand that. I think the term is anosognosia, right? When you don't realize you're active in your mental illness. So when the police came to do a wellness check, because I wasn't violent, I was just very manic and running around the neighborhood and, spending a lot of money. At some point, I think a concerned neighbor called the police to do a wellness check, and, they could tell I was sick. I was very ill, and they said that. And I said, listen, I don't want to come outside. Where's the crisis team, right? This is a mental health crisis. I'm suffering from mental illness. I'm not a criminal. Where's the ambulance? I'll get in an ambulance. Unfortunately, they didn't call an ambulance. They called the SWAT team, and we're getting prepared, brought in the battering ram. They were going to break down the front door. Luckily, I had a moment of clarity and said, I'm just going to go outside and give up, and hopefully I'll be fine. I don't want to get shot. I don't want the police to shoot my dogs. That was one of my mother's biggest fears, right? Because we see this all too often in the news. So I surrendered. I went to jail for 78 days. I spent time in solitary confinement. And a big part of that was because I was not taking any meds, right? When you get arrested, you can't ask them to, can I go back inside and get my meds? So, and so I got through that ordeal, and then came sort of all the remorse, and I became, I got a lot of medication, and I came back to not being psychotic and realized, I had ruined my life, and I lost my job, and my ex moved out, and I isolated for a long, long time, and it was a tough period. But I have a great support system. My mother realized I got sick and realized there was an issue, and just went right into action. And one of the first places she called was NAMI, NAMI, New York State, where I'm from, New York State. And it was like a success story from there. She did the family to family program. NAMI has a lot of different programs. And she said she got the tools to be able to help her son and save me. And, so she said to me, as soon as you're better, you're going to go volunteer there. I said, fine. Right. As soon as I can get out of bed, and as soon as I can shower again, and as soon as I can, get to that place. And I did. I eventually did, with her support and other people's support. And I started volunteering for NAMI. And one of the things I do is I give presentations like this. They're called In Our Own Voice, where people who are in recovery, who have lived through mental illness, will share their story, right, with others, to inspire hope and, speak out against stigma and discrimination. So I did that for a while, and then I discovered I could become a peer specialist, right? I had no idea what it was. I didn't know, I'd never heard of it before, but someone told me I could get a job in a new career by becoming a peer specialist and mental health advocate. And they want people like us and people on the, like some of my co-presenters, because we have lived experience, with mental illness, recovery, the criminal justice system. And I was like, that changed my life, because I thought my career was over. I had a criminal record. I would never get another job. I was living with my mother, and, it was a low point, but that gave me hope and inspiration. And then I took a class, right? I did a class about what it means to become a peer. And we're all peers right here today. But when we refer to a peer specialist or a peer advocate in the mental health field, it's someone who's going to share their lived experience. And if you want, I will share with you what happened to me, because you may relate to certain things. And they find that this model, I'm talking to my psychologist, or psychiatrist, and it's mostly a one-way conversation. So I did the training. It was almost life-altering. Like I learned things that I knew, but I didn't practice, like active listening, right? Like I know that if I'm speaking, I can't hear what you're saying, but until I sat in that and role modeled it and became comfortable with the silence, right? That uncomfortable silence. It just opened up a new door for me, and so it's what I do now. I get great satisfaction whenever I share my story. It makes me feel better when people tell me I've been able, something I said helped them, or something I said to their family, right? Because that's a big part of recovery, is having that support system. So that's what I do now. And that's being a peer is part of my life requirements. But this is a movement. This is a revolution, peers, and this model. And there are jobs, there are careers, and we're advocating for more jobs and for a living wage, because, peers need to pay the bills, and we should be compensated based on our experience, right? And so there's a lot of things that it's a new concept, new idea. So we're sort of pushing it, right? We're trying to get funding. I'm in New York State. We just applied for a $2 million grant from the state to increase peer support throughout the state. And so that's just very exciting, because we need peers everywhere. We need them on crisis teams. We need them in hospitals, if we can embed them with police officers. Peers, it works. They de-escalate situations. I'd rather see somebody like me instead of there's just too many examples in the news. And so I'm glad people are starting to sit up and take notice, and they're providing funding for this, because this works. And where mental health is is important for everybody, especially now, right? I mean, my whole anxiety level went up when we had to quarantine, like, okay, this may be the new normal for a while. But having a system to support and speak to other people about what I'm going through and getting support and being able to support them has helped me sort of, stay focused during this time when nothing really makes sense. So that's, I'll leave you with that. I would encourage you to, join your local NAMI, look into becoming a peer specialist, or volunteering any way you can. It's important work. It's meaningful work. That's what, got me back on my feet, volunteering, getting that structure back, and then being able to get a career and not feeling that life was over, and such meaningful work. That's just, it took me a while to figure out this is what I should be doing, but I was able to. It's such a great success story with NAMI. But I also understand, as a privileged white man, I had so much trouble navigating the situation that I know how difficult it is, and we need to be there for each other. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say for now. And I will turn it over to, I think, Laurie, are you next?
Yes, I am. Hi, my name is Laurie Schachman, and I originally am from New York. So I moved out to Arizona 7 years ago, and I am the Arizona Peer Leadership Council representative. So I'm the Peer Leadership Council representative for Arizona. I am also the first vice chair of the Peer Leadership Council, which is a advisory council to the National NAMI Board of Directors. And I just want to give a shout out to Jeremiah. He's our chair. He's in there somewhere. I can't see him right now. But anyway, so NAMI, when you think of NAMI originally, it had to do with a group of parents who came together to help their children get services that they weren't able to get. And please excuse the cat. When I joined the Peer Leadership Council, I didn't think too much about the history of it. I got sort of in there by chance because I attended a NAMI convention in 2018 in New Orleans. And I walked past a table with a banner that said Peer Leadership Council. And, I asked the woman behind the desk what that meant. And she told me that the Peer Leadership Council was peers around the country who represented their states, and that there were a representative and alternate, or there should be, for every state. And she looked at my badge, which of course had my city and state on it, and said, oh, Arizona doesn't have a rep. So, she said, would you be interested, or do you know someone who would be interested? And I thought about it. I asked her a few more questions about what it would entail. And she said, well, I don't think Arizona has a state peer leadership council. If they don't, then your board of directors has to appoint you, the state board of directors. And I walked away from her thinking about it and went around the corner of the exhibit hall and walked right into my state board president. So what I did then was I said to her, hey, I've been at this table. This is what they're saying. They're saying we don't have one. And she goes, okay, where is it? She went to talk to them. 3 months later, I was the representative for Arizona. And I got curious when we were talking about doing this as a peer leadership council about what the history of the peer leadership council is. So adding the peer voice to NAMI and having it as one of the as an advisory council, the Peer Leadership Council was the only one for many years that was in the bylaws of NAMI National, to be that advisory voice to the board of directors and to tell them what is going on with the peers in the field, because they are meeting in their meetings. They are where they are, whatever level they are in their state or affiliates, but we want to hear all around the country what's happening with peers and give that voice. So originally it started in actually 1985. I did a little research, and it started out as the Consumer Council. Now, when I started getting mental health services in the 90s, that's what we were called. In the clinic I went to, we were called consumers. It has to do with, I believe, some bills that were put out by Bill Clinton as president, where it was consumer was the words used in the bill. So then they became, consumer. And it was the Consumer Council for a long time. And it was, again, in the NAMI bylaws that there's one representative from each state and an alternate representative as well. And around 2017, it became the Peer Leadership Council. And, and that's where I joined it, was when it had become the Peer Leadership Council. And it's one of 4 advisory boards now to the NAMI National Board of Directors. There's the State Board, President's Council, the Peer Leadership Council, the Veterans Council, and the Executive Directors Council. So, it has an executive committee, a chair. I'm the first vice chair, the second vice chair, and a secretary. And, we have some subcommittees, and we also have, there is also a PLC or Peer Leadership member representative on the National Board of Governors for NAMI itself. And we have a great person doing that, Carrie Roche. And, excuse me. We have a couple subcommittees like education and training, welcome and orientation, development, and of course our advocacy committee. So the Peer Leadership Council does a lot. And there are also state ones, and somebody's going to talk about those later.
Pledge allegiance.
What is that?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to the republic which stands.
Everybody can make sure they're muted. It sounds like a little background noise.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so what is my story? My story is I started young as well with anxiety and depression. And when I hit my TAD, I had hallucinations, auditory hallucinations. And I was taken at 17 to my pediatrician because my father didn't know what to do about it. And he said I had some type of infection. And he didn't mention mental health at all. So I always thought that those things came about because I might have gotten an infection. So it took me a very long time to go and get help because of that. And it often takes a long time for people to get help, like even in Martin when he talked about his story. So what I'm going to focus on now for a few minutes is youth. Young people are going through so much with COVID. We don't know in the law, it'll take quite a while for them to, for us to know long-term how this is going to affect them. The age of anxiety and depression has gone down quite a bit. There are now 5- and 6-year-olds being diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And, and the teen suicide rates have gone up. It's the second leading cause of death for young people from age 10 all the way to 24. And NAMI does do a few things for youth, but I want to put it this way. We're talking about peers today, and young people are our peers. It doesn't matter what age they are. If they are living with a mental health condition, they are as much a peer as any of us on the screen right now. And I think that it needs to, what's done for youth needs to be expanded, especially with everything that's gone on. One of NAMI's programs that I actually do is Ending the Silence. It's done for students, for school staff, and for families. And it is a 50-minute presentation with a PowerPoint that discusses suicide prevention, a little bit about bullying, a lot about normalizing mental health as a medical condition and how students can help their friends or help other people they know. And it's very valuable for school staff, but it also can be given to any youth group. It could be a faith group. It could be a boys and girls club. It could be the Girl Scouts. Anywhere you have from a 6th to 12th grader doing some activity or being in school, you can have ending the silence done. And it's evidence-based, and it also is extremely effective. I had done a presentation, and the thing that sets NAMI's Ending the Silence apart from other programs is that there's a young adult presenter along with the lead person doing the PowerPoint. And that young adult presenter is someone between the ages of 18 and 30. The ones that I've dealt with are under 25. And the students really react to that. Even school staff really react to the fact that they tell their story and they go all the way to where they are now in their recovery. And that gives the students hope, that gives school staff hope that the kids they're seeing right now might actually go to college or to get their trade that they want and move on in their life and recover. And that they don't have to spend their life on the same level they are at the time that the school staff or the parents are seeing them. So, for me, that's the important piece of this, is that we get to them early. It's one of NAMI's strategic goals, and we need to get to them early, and we need to keep that conversation open for them so that they can come and talk to you. I did one where a young lady had, excuse the cat again, a young lady had not spoken a word to her teacher for an entire semester. And we did our presentation, and at the end of it, she came up and said to the teacher and myself as the lead, she said, "I need help. I haven't said anything, but I need help." And Martin already mentioned in our own voice, we've done that in high schools, gone into psychology classes in high schools and colleges and presented that. It's just two people telling their journey, telling their story and to their recovery. And like I said, it gives hope. It gives hope to families when we do it with a family night. It gives hope to people who are living with a mental health condition, because they see that, other people have moved to another place in their life. The other program we do for young people is NAMI on campus. And I'm very proud to say that my local community college will now have a NAMI on campus as of October 1st. And it's something we've been working on for several years. And all you need is a faculty person and 5 students, and you can have it. It's a mental health club. So most colleges will give it some funding as a club. And we finally got our local college to have a faculty advisor that is willing to take on the club. And, they can do any of our presentations, they can be in any of our classes, and they can go on campus and have a safe space, whether it's in a group or just whatever they might do. I've known of some that do a big pizza party every semester just to get people to feel comfortable going to the club. So, like I said, my focus has always been youth because I have a background in education. I worked for 20 years in the New York City school system. So, that's my focus, but I will now hand it back to Martin.
Wow, Laurie, thank you so much for sharing with us, your story and what you've been through. It's really so admirable, and thank you for coming in and doing all the peer work you do. Just a question, I guess. What keeps you going? Like, what do you see coming? Like, what do we need to be doing more of? Because certainly you mentioned the outreach to the younger folks, right? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
How do we approach them? How do we talk to them?
Actually, what I've told a lot of school staff is you ask them a basic question like, what's happening? How are you feeling today? and you listen. You know, you talked about it, Martin, about active listening. We as adults have a tendency to kind of rush in and go, okay, you know, this 16-year-old's hurting, so we're going to fix it. So they're not hurting anymore, because we can't stand to see that with young people. You know, as adults, it upsets us. And I have to say to myself, okay, self, sit down and listen. Just sit there and listen, because this is about them and not about what you need to solve. And we have to just be there for them and be present and listen. And then we can get enough information to know where to go with it. You know, if it's just they need their school counselor, see their school counselor, they need therapy, or if they need more, you know, but if you try to jump in and fix it before they are comfortable talking to you or have finished talking to you, they're going to turn off and they're not going to want to go to any help at all. You know, it's difficult enough to get a teenager to do stuff, so, you know, whether it's at home, whether it's at school, but, you know, if they're having a mental health condition at the same time, if they're living with that, it's even more difficult for them to do the day-to-day things. And we have to take that into account as well, that it's not going to be the same for them in terms of that, of day-to-day things that it would be for a child that's not suffering from anxiety. So, you know, and it's, you know, everything's going younger and younger due to COVID, you know, so we're going to see in the future, I think, a lot more young people with a lot more social issues, a lot more issues around anxiety, a lot more issues around, you know, just being with people, because, you know, this isolation has affected them greatly.
Right. Wow. Thank you. That's great. It reminds me of, I remember my mother dragged me to therapy once when I was in high school, and I went, but I refused to answer any questions, you know, like, you know, Martin's not going to talk today. No one can make him talk, you know, so we sat there looking at each other,
and you know what? I've done that. I've sat through that. I've sat through an entire school period of 50 minutes in silence with a kid. And the next week they came back and said, why didn't you make me talk? And I said, I can't. So, you know, so we'll sit here until you're ready to talk.
Right. Great. Thank you so much, Laurie. That's very helpful. So I think Bob is scheduled to go next, but I don't think he was able to join us. So maybe Sierra, if you want to say something, if you're ready. If not, we can go to somebody else.
No, I'm ready.
Okay. Yay, Sierra.
Yeah. So I'll start with my personal, I'll start getting into like the, I'm trying to figure out all sorts of camera stuff. Okay. Anyway, so we'll start with the personal recovery story, because I think that kind of that's what ties us all together. There was a click. Okay. Anyway. Okay, let's try this again, y'all. Okay, my personal recovery story starts when I was 11. That was the first time I had a suicidal ideation, and I was in rural Minnesota. I'm from Minnesota. I'm the NAMI Minnesota alternate for the Peer Leadership Council. And when I was 11, I called the police on myself because my life was in danger, and that's what I thought you were supposed to do. That is, and that was the only option. That mental health wasn't talked about. So from there, the police came, assessed me. I was put in an ambulance. I went to an ER, and then I was put in a 72-hour hold for the first time, which was over 100 miles away from my house. And from there, everything started. It was the start of a very long journey. At 13, I was inpatient at a residential treatment center for 3 months. In high school, I hit almost every one of the youth mental health hospitals because of this. At one point, I was put in a kind of like a halfway house, like for youth almost. It was for delinquents because there wasn't a bed for youth. And that, like, there was an orange jumpsuit and all of that. And then when I was 18, like 11th grade, I kind of got some of myself together. And then when I was 18, I had another depressive episode. So I was finally diagnosed with bipolar type 2, and I was living with generalized anxiety disorder this entire time, along with chronic pain, illnesses stemming from polycystic ovarian syndrome and fibromyalgia, among other things that we found out later. When I was 18, after a depressive episode, I ended up in another hospital, which became kind of routine. I did a lot of homework, switched schools a lot. I got used to that. But because I was finally an adult and I had been doing the mental health treatment stuff for 7 years with no luck or recovery, they suggested and did electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, also known as shock therapy. And from there, I lost about an entire year of my memory, diagnosed amnesia, and things, ECT saved my life, but there was a cost to my memory. And I had to do it maintenance because it would continue over and over. I'd keep cycling through my depressive episodes, kept hitting lows, would have to continuously do the ECT. From there, I got more chronic illnesses. I almost had my colon taken out, and then I realized a lot of those things were food related. And in April of 2019, I got into recovery through ketamine after being on ECT for most of my adult life. And after that, I was in and out of schools. And I've always been a really good student. That's where I get a lot of my self-esteem from, unfortunately. Like, if you look at it, it's like, that's probably a perfectionistic thing. It's fine. And so from there, I started volunteering with NAMI because I was like, oh, I might want to do law school. How do I pad my resume to tell my story about withdrawing out of schools? That was initially why I went into NAMI. Then I got hooked. I'd started with the connection groups because I wanted to show that I was in recovery on my resume. And then I found the power of connection groups, like facilitating groups where people just share their stories and ask for help is so powerful. And then after that, I started doing In Our Own Voice, where I just tell a much longer version of the story I just told. And then from there, I was asked if I wanted to be the Minnesota alternate. So I agreed. And then from there, I was asked if I wanted to be, to help with setting up Minnesota's first peer specialist conference. And so I had the opportunity to do that, which was last month. And I also got to speak on that because I got a psychology degree. And for my capstone project, I talked about psychedelics and mental health. And that's what I want to talk about quickly, is that recovery is possible. And that's really what I think that peers really, like, it means, is that we all have found recovery in our own way. Our own stories and narratives have led us to a recovery. And recovery isn't linear. Recovery isn't a destination, it's a journey. But talking about it and showing, like, being an example, I get to now be the role model that, like, little me could have definitely looked up to. And so with the psychedelic research, it's less about saying, like, oh, do psychedelics, and more saying there are new treatments coming out all the time for these things. We're learning more and more. And I think that's just really exciting because it does bring hope. Because that wasn't something I had when I was younger. As a kid with a mental illness, that was who I was. There was no changing that. It wasn't living with a mental illness and having a psychology degree and being a public speaker on mental health and going to law school in 2 days. It wasn't any of those things. It was just, I am mentally ill. And instead it is, I am living with a mental illness and I'm in recovery, And a lot of people are. And there's power in that because there's perspective in that. And so that kind of leads me to like why I'm part of the PLC specifically, the Peer Leadership Council, what we're all on. And that's because it gives us a voice and a seat at the table, if you will. And we have a direct line to be making changes that we find are necessary. And there's power within having a group of people with very, very specific perspectives that can change things. And we see this. We have discussions on 988, which I believe Brenda will be talking about, or there's so much going on. So I will kind of leave with just a message of hope, saying like, recovery is possible. And the more we talk about it, the more we put language to these hardships, the more that people like me when I was little, like the youth, or people who never really got to know that it is okay to talk about and find help, and that it is a lifelong diagnosis, but you can get past the disorder and just continue, because each day comes whether you want it to or not. And it's better to just kind of ride that wave than fight against it, in my experience. So thank you for letting me speak.
Wow, Sierra, thanks so much. You have a very emotional story, and thank you for sharing that. Especially coming right after, what Laurie spoke about and how important it is, for the youth and to look and listen early on. You said a lot of things that resonated with me, and one was the acceptance, right? I know for me, when I accepted the fact that yes, I have an illness, yes, I may need to take meds for the rest of my life. Once I accepted that, things became much easier. And I just wonder, how did you come to accept? And like what keeps you going? Because you've come so far, right? I mean, you're going to law school, you're going to be a mental health advocate, attorney, litigator. Like, that's awesome. How, talk a little bit about that.
I often will say that once I figured out that I'm not the victim in my story, that shifted things, because what happened to me is not my fault. It's not my fault I have a mental illness. It's not my fault I live in pain, but it is my responsibility to try my best to take care of that in a way that makes things a bit easier the next day. So just becoming a little more self-aware about my self-sabotaging routines, or how if I have very little energy, it's going to kind of continue on if I don't do something to intervene. And so I keep going just with the idea that 20% is better than nothing. And I live in a place of perfectionism, so that sometimes is difficult too. So then I procrastinate. It's a whole ordeal. But overall, it's helpful to just realize that I have much more power within this than I at first believed.
Right. Thanks so much. It reminds me of, I think it was a quote by Martin Luther King, if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl, right? 20% is better than 0%. And wow, that's great. I'm so glad you're on this call with us. So I think up next we have Andrea.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. My name is Andrea Colby. I live in Vermont. I'm originally from Massachusetts. I have had diagnosis of mental health since I was a child as well. I found NAMI from a wonderful woman named Claire Minot. She lived in Vermont and passed away a few years back. And she said we were at a different organizational meeting, and she said, "Oh, have you heard of NAMI?" And I said, "No, never heard of NAMI." And she told me what NAMI was, and so I listened and put that on the sideline, and for a few years, and continued along my mental health journey in Vermont of recovery and working as a peer leader in Bennington, Vermont, and just really in 2008 I joined the first connection group of people to be trained for facilitations in Vermont for the connection meeting, the peer connection meeting that you heard about earlier. And I've been doing connection meeting ever since. I joined Peer Leadership Council in Vermont, probably about 2012. We had a very active council, and it's not very active right now. Currently, I am the Peer Leadership Council Chair of the Development Committee, and so I wanted to talk a bit about that and what the importance is of developing a peer leadership council in your state. As you've heard some of our peers speak already, wouldn't it be wonderful to have your voice in your state wherever you live? And to do this, you really only need like 5 members, and then somebody who can lead that, and you have like maybe 1 hour of service that's required. And you know, every state is different based on their size, but if you're an affiliate in your state, you know, Vermont's a smaller state, so we have a certain amount of affiliates, and those affiliates would join the Peer Leadership Council, and we would have a peer leadership meeting from our state, and then there would be a peer leadership representative to the National Council. And so we're trying to develop this, and our hope is that we'll be able to have every state represented, and each state will be able to be representative. My other core NAMI program that I am a part of is the NAMI Faith Net. I'm a Jewish woman living in Vermont, in rural Vermont, and there's synagogues here, and I have brought the education of NAMI to my local synagogue to so that they could be educated, and I could people who have mental health conditions may be able to feel more welcome coming to the synagogue. And during this time of COVID, when people are stuck at home and they don't have as much getting around and getting into your synagogue, you know, mental health conditions are popping up everywhere in all different faiths. And representing the Jewish faith of this piece of it in my area, but I also go into churches and any other faith organization and educate and speak about NAMI FaithNet program and what it brings, and how to help people feel connected and not isolated and stigmatized. And the other thing I wanted to say, which Sierra said so beautifully, is that recovery is possible, and by speaking out and educating others is the way that I help myself. I also have a physical illness, and you know, I really love and live by the saying as well, you know, don't let the illness live me. I'm not the illness, and the illness isn't my fault, and to really never give up hope. So that's really what I came to say today, and I kept it short so others could speak.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for sharing part of your journey. You talked about, I guess, you know, how you found NAMI, right? And we need to get into more communities, right? How should folks, you know, who aren't involved, how should they get involved? How can we get more people involved? You know, because you're right, there's so many groups, right? There's NAMI Connections, which is a support group. There's In Our Own Voice, and you know, there's almost a group for almost everybody, right? We're creating new groups all the time. Where do you see a need?
Well, I really see a need in the faith interfaith. There's interfaith connections everywhere in Vermont, and I see that, you know, if we all came together and really unified and identified and allowed people to come in and feel welcome that have a mental health condition, and not just say, oh, they have schizophrenia, and oh, they're crazy and they don't belong here and we have to kick them out. And, you know, if we could just really educate all the different, you know, churches or synagogues or any place of worship, wherever that might be. I think it's important to tell the story and just keep it going and allow that one person, whatever age they are, whether they're a child or an adult, to feel comfortable going into a place of faith where they could, where they want to pray or whatever they're going to be doing there spiritually to help their spirituality. Because I think it's important to also have a spiritual connection in order to enhance recovery.
Right. Wow, that's, yeah, very powerful. Well said. And I know we've all been talking about recovery, right? And I think Sierra said it's not linear, right? And what does recovery mean, right? How we define recovery, right? My recovery is not what my mother thinks it is or other people think it is, right? It's a very personal thing. And thank you for, you know, talking about your recovery. That's and the work you do, and right, we have to meet people in the community, right? If it's in the synagogue or the church or, you know, at a college club, we need to go out and meet them there because we know they need help. And I know when I needed help, well, I didn't know I needed help, and then I didn't know where to go for help. So thank you for all the good work you're doing.
Thank you. My pleasure being here today.
Glad to have you. So I think Aimée, are you next?
I believe so. And first of all, I want to say, wow, you guys, I have so appreciated hearing all your stories in a little bit more detail as I have come to know you working through the Peer Leadership Council. And I want to thank everybody that is attending this session and has put on this amazing conference. I am so honored and humbled to be here with my fellow advocates. I am definitely sensing a theme here between us as we talk, because my story, even though I wasn't diagnosed until I was 20 years old, I can honestly say that I have had symptoms all my life. Only back then there wasn't a word in the lexicon. There was no way to begin to understand the rituals and patterns that I needed to function in the world. My teachers and parents, of course, did their best, but I just needed things a certain way. So there were many terms that were used to describe me: high strung, overactive imagination, and my favorite was spoiled. If you just taught her she can't have things her own way, she would learn to accommodate to the world. And in fact, I did, but at a terrible cost, because my rituals, my need for simple things like the exact steps to school, or the fact, you know, this was the 70s, so let's be honest, my mom had Tupperware and it was in horrible colors like burnt umber and avocado green, and but in my world I had to have the yellow plate, my father had to have the red plate, my mom the brown plate, and that's just the way it had to be. And if that didn't happen, you know, I would injure. I did not have any other way of expressing that except to make that pain visible on my body. And of course, like I said, there's no, you know, people were trying to help me, but again, it wasn't discussed, it wasn't talked about. And I learned pretty quickly that I wasn't going to get anywhere unless I stopped expressing that. And so I began to take it out in repeated ways in my body. I started cutting at 9 years old. I was at a family get together, and the donuts were not organized in color coordination. And that really bothered me. And it bothered me so much that I started to throw up, and that felt good. And so I remember sneaking into the bathroom and taking another donut and eating it like as fast as I could and being like, oh, and then making myself throw it up and be like, oh, that felt really good. So now we've got cutting, now we've got disordered eating, and these survival tactics, because that's what they were. They helped me survive. Of course, in a way, they also, you know, were very harmful. Nobody said they were going to be long lasting, but they were effective for a while. Until, like I said, I was 20, and I had locked myself in my apartment for 3 days before anybody came and got help. And that was the first time that I had that concrete diagnosis. And I was relieved. I felt legitimized. You know, here was this medical problem that was wrong with me. And now I could say, you know what, I'm not weak. I have an actual medical diagnosis. And of course, being the curious person that I instantly went to the college library and checked out all the books on my diagnosis. And it was so bleak. I mean, the statistics were just awful. You know, it was addiction, suicide. There was not at all an inkling of hope or recovery there. And then those were the dark days. We'll go through those years where my agoraphobia got so bad that on a good day, I could reach outside my front door and get my mail. On a bad day, I couldn't leave the bathroom. And, you know, but jump forward, and I moved back home to my home state of Nebraska. And that's who I serve NAMI, Nebraska. I'm the chair of the Peer Leadership Council here. Nebraska is an interesting place. It's very rural, as you can imagine. I do happen to live in the river valley of the Missouri in the great town of Omaha. So I'm not from such a rural area, but you know, finding treatment in rural areas is not an easy task, and that is the number one complaint from my region, is how do we get peers connected to services when, you know, there isn't a psychiatrist or a psychologist, you know, anywhere near within 500 miles, you know. But back to my little bit, I moved back home. And I was in this bubble world. I wasn't being hospitalized. I wasn't necessarily self-injuring on a regular basis, but I wasn't doing anything else either. You know, I was just sort of in that existence. And then I found NAMI. And I realized that I was in this bubble. It wasn't a bad bubble compared to some of the other places I had been, but it wasn't exactly living either. And I needed that bubble to pop. And that's what NAMI provided for me. Getting involved in the peer support movement was like, it lit the naphtha of my existence. Like, I stopped asking that question, like, why did this happen to me? And I went to, what can I do with this? You know, how can I help other people not feel alone? How can I help other people reach outside of that that shame spiral and that idea of otherness, which brings me to what I want to talk about today, which is trauma and ableism. I always find this weird when I'm talking with others to say that my one great passion is trauma, but it is true, and the reason is because if we go back, we can, as a survivor of childhood sexual assault, so much of my narrative begins and ends with trauma. You know, I don't really remember life without trauma. What would my brain have looked like had it not been rewired at that, you know, formative young age? We'll never know. And it doesn't even matter. I spent a lot of wasted energy. What if, you know, where did that get me? My bathroom, apparently, and that's about it. So I had to learn how to regain my own narrative. And part of that was understanding trauma. When I was able to go back to school, you know, I found myself absolutely studying trauma studies and what that means in a psychosocial situation. As a longtime writer and poet, you know, the idea that our words carry our trauma just as much as our, you know, the way we interact, you know, like that I could find this wholeness within myself between my, you know, my writing, which has always been my salvation, my understanding now of my body and the way that my brain is functioning. You know, I hate to say that it was dysfunctional because it's all I've ever known. You know, when you talk to people who have traumatic experiences, for a lot of times there was like the before the incident or after the incident. But what we see when you have prolonged trauma is a complete different way of functioning. And we can also look at things like autism in this way. I was just listening to Morenike Gaiwa Unawa. I hope I didn't butcher her name too much. She's a huge writer and artist and speaker on autism. And she says, you know, I will not use the term autism spectrum disorder like we do in the States. I use autism spectrum condition, which is what they use in Britain and Europe. Because to me, my thinking is not disordered. It is just different. You know, it's all I've ever known. So I don't think it's broken. When we start looking at our brain and our whole health, and we start saying like, well, it's abnormal, therefore it's wrong or bad, we're just creating that otherness of stigma. You know, I feel like for me, part of going back and learning to own my own negative or my own narrative and find that voice that I needed, that I only knew on the page. You know, I only knew how to emote and express myself in words on the page. I couldn't vocalize them, you know, and the more you can't vocalize something, the more it sort of like rots around in your body, you know, bouncing around like a ping pong ball. And so getting to that understanding that I wasn't an other, I wasn't weird, different, weak, whatever things you want to put into that shame that comes along with stigma, you know, that I was just fine. I was maybe neurodiverse, you know, maybe I wasn't the neurotypical way, but you know, it didn't have to be that medical model either, that I was this broken, damaged, you know, I'd been molested, you know, couldn't function, I had OCD, I had PTSD, I had an alphabet soup of diagnosis on my, you know, rap chart, if you will. And none of that was empowering to me. It was learning that my voice had value, my experience had value. Not just to me personally, that I could love myself, but that I could use it in the world to help reach others. I think that was the most wonderful thing that could have happened to me, to help me get out of that, you know, that small world that I had that existed, you know, just of the 4 rooms in my house. And so I'd like to quick share this idea of ableism with you now. I'm trying to be very cautious of the time. But I do want to share this. You know, in the last few years, I realized I wasn't the best peer support specialist. I still work at peer support. I still do like that, but I didn't, you know, it wasn't what I wanted to do ultimately. And so I'm not currently working as a peer support specialist. What I am doing is working as a disability specialist. And I intern with the Disability Rights Nebraska. I'm currently on their board. So I do a lot of work with like disability and the Disability Visibility Project. I'm currently at the Med Center, the University of Nebraska Med Center here doing a Lend Fellowship. But I want to talk about ableism, and T.S. Lewis has my favorite, what they call a working definition. And T.S. says that ableism is a system that places value on people's bodies and minds based on societally constructed ideas of normalcy, intelligence, excellence, and productivity. They go on, this form of systemic oppression leads to people and society determining who is valuable and worthy based on a person's appearance and or their ability to satisfactorily produce, reproduce, excel, and behave. How many of us have heard that you have abnormal behavior? Well, you know, that doesn't mean it, you know, that it's bad or wrong, right? I mean, what is normalcy anyway? What is normal? We've all heard it, right? Hopefully, a setting on the washing machine. That's all normal is. A setting on the washing machine. The rest of us all have what we call neurodiversity. We're all different. Everybody's brain works in a little bit of a different way. Some of those, you know, like if you know statistics, you know that you have, you know, if you plot everybody's little brain and where it works on any given task, you're going to have outliers. You know, they solve the task a little bit differently. You know, that's okay. That's what changes the world when people start to think differently. You know, my dad was an electrical engineer and he could fix anything. I tell you, neighbors all over the neighborhood would bring him their broken appliances and somehow he'd find the way to make it work again. Quite often, it was not at all the way it should have been working, but he got it to work. You know, the blender still works. If you had taken it to a blender repair shop, they would have never done what my dad did to sort of rewire the circuits or whatever like that. Doesn't mean it's bad. It worked. It functioned. It did what it was supposed to. You know, so when we stop looking at things as abnormal or broken or dysfunctional, when we start looking at our individual humans as just the way they are, you know, wouldn't it be a different place to live? You know, so much of our advocacy work, and I'm so proud to be along with so many of the wonderful people in NAMI. You know, and their work, it is changing. We have seen such a difference in the way that we understand and treat mental and behavioral health over the last, you know, couple of decades. And we are emerging from that idea of the medical model where you're broken, I need to fix you. And whenever, you know, so many of us talk about we need to fix, you got to fix, you got to, you know, like normalize you. And I have this amazing quote by this, I know I use quotes a lot. I really do. It's how I relate to the world. I'm a reader, I'm a writer. You know I can't say it well, so I borrow the words from somebody else. There's this thing in poetry where they always say like good poets borrow, great poets steal. So I'm always stealing words from other people. But this one I will give credit to. Lila Watson, she's a Maori woman, Aboriginal Australian activist. And she talks about advocacy in this way. If you have come here to help me, you're wasting your time. Mm-hmm. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with me, then let us work together. And I think we're seeing more of that. And this is what I love about Lila Watson's quote, is even though it's attributed to her, she didn't say it. She will not take credit for it. As an Aboriginal rights activist, she was part of an organization, and she said, our organization came together to write this. And this is why the PLC is so wonderful and so powerful in what we do and our intention. It is because we are a community. We all come with different strengths and different deficits, if you want to call them that. But just like any other community, you know, we've got work to do. We come together to get it done. And I can't think of anything more inspirational than that. So thank you. I'm sorry if I rambled on a little bit too much. But I just so appreciate being here with all of you guys today.
Oh, thank you so much. Wow. Your advocacy and passion comes through a little bit, you know. It's thank you. Yeah, listen, you got to accept it, right? This is wonderful. And I know a couple of comments or questions came up in the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end. I think we have our next speaker will be Brenda.
I've been so entertained listening to my peers. My name is Brenda, and I'm from Kansas City, Kansas, and that is in Wyandotte County. And I live with a diagnosis of bipolar, and I am 61 years old. I have one adult son and one adult granddaughter. And in my early 20s was my onset, and I divorced early. And I think that because of my onset and my ex-husband not knowing or having education on how to support me was the big thing that happened there. And so I went on in my early years destructive, always having my family to bail me out. And one day I just crashed so hard, and I thought about everything you do affects other people. And so I didn't want to keep hurting my family. So I went to seek help. And when I was in the mental health center, he was telling me about NAMI and invited me to come to their affiliate. So that was my jump off with NAMI. I am a member of NAMI's a member of NAMI's board of directors. I am the PLC president for NAMI Kansas. I am a PLC rep. I am an In Your Voice presenter, a peer-to-peer mentor. I am a board president for a peer-led organization. Our name is SIDE, and we're located in downtown Wyandotte County. I sit on the CAC board of directors. I am a member of Mental Health Kansas Coalition. I think that's, our affiliate vice president. I'm their vice president. So I like that. I like to give back. That's what helps me. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the 988. And by now, I think a lot of people know that the 10-digit number has been changed to 3 numbers, 988. And I think that the 988 number, and we all think that same thing, I hope, is that it's an easier number to remember, and it's a faster way to get help. And there's some questions from my peers about who will be on the other side of that line when we implement that in July of 2022. Will it be a clinical social worker, a CPS person of lived experience, a person that has been trained with mental health, first aid mental health training, excuse me, and family of lived experience. This service will be implemented. I already told you that, sorry. The key to me is, even if we're in psychosis, we just want to be heard. So I think that that person on the other end of the phone should be so passionate and effective in listening. And the table for the person to be effective, I mean, the advocate to advocate. I asked myself, were peers going to be at the table? And then I got invited to be on the 988 planning committee, which there are a lot of peers on there as well. So that was basically what I had to say, and I hope that we could have some conversation about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's I think somebody made this comment earlier, like if they don't invite us to the table, just show up, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, and that certainly comes through with, you know, like, you have been approached by people, what's going to be our involvement, and you're like, let me find out, let me go sit down at the table, and I'm going to tell folks that you know, the 988 is going to go into effect. You know, peers are involved, they're going to be involved, so let's get them, you know, let's the advocacy. Yeah, it's so important. And you know, by you advocating, you're teaching others to advocate, right? I mean, can you talk a little bit about, you know, self-advocacy? And I know at times when I was sick, I couldn't pick up a phone and make a phone call, and I was glad somebody there was to advocate on my behalf.
Right.
And now you can share, right? How do you share with others your successes?
Well, basically, the biggest part is the peer-led organization, Side Inc. And again, we're located in Kansas City, Kansas. That gives me the opportunity to support. Sometimes we have to take people to RSI. Sometimes people come to the table and sit with me and say, hey, Miss Brenda, can I talk to you? And it may take 20, 25 minutes, but that's what we should do for each other. And we talk a lot about stigma. It's still there and it's strong.
Right, right. Well, thank you. I mean, this is great to hear from people all over the country, you know, what different folks are working on, and letting folks know about, like, right, 988, the crisis line is going to go into effect next July, whether we're ready or not. So this is great. I think this was our last speaker, but I know some people asked some questions in the chat or made some comments. Let's see. Diane, did you want to talk? I know you mentioned about not being our diagnosis, right? And we're not our condition, mental health conditions. If Diane's still with us, I don't know if you want to ask that question.
Oops. Yes, I'm still here. And you were asking if I wanted to comment on.
Well, I just noticed, I think you said something about, right, we're not our diagnosis, right?
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. And I was really just commenting off, I believe it was Sierra that had mentioned that. I think it was Sierra, I'm not sure. If I got it wrong, charge it to my heart, charge it to my head, not my heart. But anyways, you know, I was just saying that, you know, that is something that is so true, because a lot of times, you know, people with mental health conditions and even people without mental health conditions, we don't get the same, you know, we don't get the same thing as if somebody with a physical health condition. Nobody walks around calling anybody cancer or diabetes or anything like that, you know, but when they see somebody with a mental health condition, you know, oh, that's the person that has such and such or whatever, you know. And so I just really appreciated when she had mentioned that, you know, because that's something that we really have to continue letting people know, that, you know, you're not your mental health condition. And just because, you know, you have a mental health condition, that doesn't mean that it's going to stop you from going anywhere. So I just, you know, just really appreciated that, and just wanted to bring mention of that. So thank you guys. And thank you guys for powerful presentations.
Martin, can I say one thing?
Yeah,
or are we out of time? Okay.
No, we have plenty of time.
I was going to say that when we have a tendency to separate our brains and our bodies. That's something I bring to all the school things I do, because you have someone has a mental health condition, you're separating their brain from their body. It's all medical, it's all part of who we are. And I loved how Aimée said that so eloquently. It is who we are. You know, it's a part of who we are. What people name it and other people name it, you know, we don't have control over. But how we do it for ourselves and other peers is to give us all the freedom to say, okay, these are not separate things. It's a part of our whole. It's a part of who we are. And, you know, and we change with it as recovery changes and other things in our lives change. So it's, you know, it's a different way of adapting and a different way, you know, of looking at things. But again, it's not separate from who we are as just a being, as a person.
Great, great, thank you. Sierra, did you want to touch on that topic?
Because I completely agree. And in the beginning psychology courses that I took, it would often be said that everything psychological is biological. And obviously there's like nuance to that, but it really kind of hits home where everything's so connected. And that took me a long time with the chronic pain, because that was taken way more seriously than the like all of the mental illness stuff. And so I think it's important to recognize the language we're using, because words are descriptive, not prescriptive. So when we're saying things like, or even hearing them, like people being called crazy, calling people out and saying that like people are just people, and we do this all, it's a shaming where we're using language like that person is lazy, that person is not paying attention. It's like, no, that's the action they are performing at the moment, and you're placing judgment on it, as well as attaching it to their personality and who you perceive them to be. And so I just kind of wanted to continue on with what you all were saying, to mention how language is so important to these discussions.
Well said.
Thank you, Sierra. It reminds me of, right, you can put a label on me, and we have to be so careful. Labels can be so hurtful. And like, I can call myself crazy, but you know, you can't unless you're my friend, right? Or a family member. Somebody else brought up in the chat box about microdosing. Do you want to, I don't know if that person's still here, or if you want to touch on that, Sierra?
Yeah, that's so when it comes to a lot of the research that I have kind of like, I didn't do the research myself. I just dove into the current research that's there. And when it comes, a lot of people are self-medicating, which I want to make it very clear that I'm not advocating for, because I'm advocating for more research, decriminalization,
Right.
voting for people who
Right.
recognize that. And so that kind of doing like a call to action, knowing who your local politicians are is really important,
Right.
because that is where you're going to start seeing like people either criminalizing mental illness even more, or decriminalizing mental illness. And psychedelics is part of that as well, because there are many people who are self-medicating with illegal substances, which is federally illegal, and that if caught, that can ruin people's lives based on the poor system we have built right now. So it's important. That being said, there's a lot. I'll put a website in if you want a resource to look into some studies that are going on that you may qualify to participate in, and or just some of the current research in certain psychedelics. Maps.org, which I'll put in the link, is a really good starting point. So I hope that helps.
I just want to say that I was the one who put that in, but I'm not microdosing. I said I was researching it, because I have just been listening to people who well, she's a doctor who has been she's an actual doctor who has been talking about it, and she has she has videos, and I've been reading about different things from different doctors, and actually I've just been, once I ran across some of her videos, all of a sudden I just started running across a lot of things about it. And I was just really surprised, and running across different things from people who were saying that it actually helped them and took away their depression, because my depression is very, it's very medication resistant. And my doctor and my neurosurgeon actually said that it could be because a couple years ago, just out of the blue, I actually had a car accident, and then they found out I had a tumor, and I didn't know I had a brain tumor. And so I had brain surgery, and then they found out that could be one reason as to why I'm very medication resistant. So I don't know, but it's just been very recent that I found out about it. And then all of a sudden it was everywhere that I started finding out about it. And so then all of a sudden you mentioned it. And so I'm just like, wow, I'm just hearing it a lot of places. And so that's why I just happened to put it in there, but I'm not doing it. So you put in your stuff in there, and I will put in whatever that you were going to put in there, the links, and I will check it out. Thank you.
I think it's great to be researching these things. There's a whole psychedelic renaissance going on right now. I just kind of like, because of, well, I mean, in a professional sense, I can't advocate for it. That also being said, I do, when you're researching, I would recommend looking also into ketamine and ketamine clinics, because there's a lot of research about treatment resistant depression and ketamine. And it's FDA approved in certain different types of, like Spravato, the nasal spray is FDA approved. That being said, that's not like, technically, I'm not giving you advice. I'm not a medical doctor.
Yeah, no, and someone else that and one of the other presenters mentioned something else that I wrote down. I think it might have been yesterday, and it mentioned something, and I don't know if it was something electrical, but that was for people that were their depression was kind of resistant, and I wrote that down too. So I'm just writing things down when I hear that, because I know that that happens to pertain to me. So thank you.
And that leads into just kind of like how much new things are out there for treatment resistant disorders. And for me, that's a really huge place of hope, because it just continuously is evolving.
Thank you.
Exactly, Sarah. I'm sorry, Martin. I just wanted to
go right ahead.
I just wanted to add real quick too, I certainly agree with what Sierra said. Just continue doing your research, because especially with someone with lived experience with TBI, research is changing, things are changing, but it's good. I tell people all the time, just like if you were to go to the doctor for a physical condition and you didn't get your what you wanted, you go back and you keep doing your research. So that's the same thing we have to do when it comes to our mental health. So bravo to you for doing that. Back to you, Martin. Sorry about that.
No, please. We have a few minutes left, and this is a great conversation, discussion, and we're available to exchange emails. If folks want to follow up with individuals after, that'd be great. I would encourage that.
Hey, Martin. Hi, it's Tanya. Can I jump in? I just wanted to.
Absolutely, Tanya, our fearless leader.
First of all, I just wanted to say, wow. Thank you, all of you, for sharing your stories, your commitment and passion. It is truly inspiring. As a person with lived experience, I can relate. I am so thankful that you are doing the work that you're doing, representing NAMI. And we couldn't do this work without you. We couldn't do this work without your vulnerability and sharing your story. It's something that's very important There were so many things that I want to touch on, and we don't have a lot of time, but really some themes that came out of this are just the importance of empathy and voice and choice, and how we need to respect one another and the way that our recovery journey leads us. There was that hope and unity and healing. And how do we do that together? First of all, how do we do that? How do you heal for yourself? But how do we heal in community? Because we heal in community and not in isolation. So the power of peer support. Thank you for speaking to that. And I just want to say, in regards to, saying words are powerful, yes, indeed. And our brains are not broken, they are bionic. And we can do amazing things, especially together. We can do that. And I just want to say, I see all of you as superheroes in my eyes. And, I was thinking today is actually 57 years ago, Martin Luther King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech. And I was just thinking about everything you were saying. And I'm like, how do we reimagine our mental health system? How do we reimagine what recovery looks like for all of us? And then Martin, you mentioned the whole Martin Luther King quote, right? And then I was like, okay. And then another quote came to mind, because I love quotes too. And I'm the same way. I'm like, that's the way my brain works. And so I wanted to share this quote because it's so fitting to this group and to all of us as peers, and even those of us that really have not identified with a mental health challenge or condition in the past. We've all gone through some type of trauma in the last year, more than a year, with everything that's going on. So right now we are all peers, regardless of what labels we may have gotten. And, the idea that we need to remove those because we're just different. So this is the quote that I love. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. You are light. When you share your story, you are light to someone who is in darkness. And as peers, that is what we do. We help each other. We go through, like we said, recovery is not linear. It's like this. And there's going to be times you're down here and your peer is going to say, I've been there, I'm here for you. And you'll be able to return the favor at some point. And that is the power of community. So I just want to say, on behalf of myself, thank you. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to work with you. And as a representative of NAMI National, I just want to say it is an honor to have you as part of our Peer Leadership Council. Thank you for your leadership, because your lived experience is your expertise. And we always say nothing about us without us. So thank you for representing that.
Wow, thank you so much, Tanya. That's beautiful. I love your quotes. And right, nothing to us without us, right? And we're going to be at the table and have a seat. I know it's 3:30. We may get cut off, but if anybody has any last questions or comments, I'm still here. We're here until they cut us off. If not, everybody have a great day. I don't know. Conquer the world, go out and advocate, become a peer specialist.
Or
Thank you
not.
all.
You don't have to become a peer support specialist. You can do anything you want.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Can always join the peer leadership.
Well, thanks, everyone. This was really great. And thanks for everyone for working together and sharing all your stories. And looking forward to continue working with everybody. And hopefully we'll have some new members who are here today and get inspired.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everyone. Be well.
Thank you.